just a really warm welcome, even in the coolness, like warmth into your heart, for this topic about localizing our food security in uncertain times. And we have the Changemakers Permaculture Design Course team, minus, I'll just straight away say, Rupus Faust, who's just announced a baby boy is...
Congratulations!
But we're so excited to have the rest of the team here. And Shay Douglas from Earth Heroes Television is going to be filming us tonight, which is really fantastic. So if anyone doesn't want to be filmed, then you know how to keep cryptic. So we plan to dive directly into some of the themes that really came up strong for us during this COVID time, where we kind of had to go underground. And we really want to speak to not only just food security in itself, which we're going to define shortly, but we want to speak to organic food and the limitations around that. We want to speak to local seed. We want to speak to local supply food chains. We want to speak to local medicine and food as medicine, land tenure, and to explore ideas that myself, all of us, have to take responsibility for, and the approach that we do towards localizing our food sources. It all matters so very, very much. Has anyone been involved in some kind of crisis of some sort apart from a pandemic? Yeah, so earthquake, war, flooding, and you've had the food chains, the supply chains cut off. I mean, it's a big deal. Bushfires, yeah. And when we learn through permaculture about community response to disaster, we kind of always looked at the pandemic as the option, and it's like, oh yeah, wonder if that might ever happen. We never really thought it would, and here we are. So we want to speak directly to this experience. So my name's Annaliese Hordern. It's a real pleasure and honor. Thank you, Earth Frequency, for having us and the team here. I'm the director of the Changemakers Permaculture Design Course and been involved with permaculture for the last 20 years. And my passion is localizing food, and I work with a seed company, and I'm really into plants. And joining with me on my left is Jay Jackson, Organic Motion.
Good evening, everyone.
And he's a project manager and supports schools and families and corporations to design edible landscapes. We also have Taj Cicluna here from Melbourne, the Perma Pixie. And I really love what she is such an essential, critical part of permaculture. She's a botanical educator, and I just love that, botanical educator. She's deep into the plants.
I love plants. I do.
So we have Jay Irving here, an award-winning Canadian architect that lives in Australia, Barefoot Sustainable Design. And we have Erin Young, Potent Edge, who's a leadership coach and consultant. So just welcome everyone here. It's so good to be back with the team again. We've had some time away from each other. But
thank you.
Getting locked in again.
Yeah, thanks.
And welcome to everyone on the side there, guys. There's plenty of space. And come and get cozy. Come and get warm.
You're just shadows right now. It's like, okay, they're out there.
All right, so I want to throw the first question to Jay Jackson, and I'd like you to define for us about what food security is, but especially what organic food security is and how it affects us and our environment.
Thanks, Annaliese. Food security. Well, it's like feeling secure with access to our food. And in this case, organic food security really refers to how can I be sure that I can get access and that I can have organic food no matter what's going on in the world. And especially in changing times with natural disasters, medical disasters, where we're faced with these conditions of like, I can't necessarily rely on sources outside of myself. So a big part of what I do in permaculture is really look at how can we ensure that individuals, families and communities have access to food and can feel secure that if there is issues with bigger distributors, bigger corporations and supply lines, then we're still able to access that. And that could be through community gardens, local food network systems, through urban farming networks, and through backyard gardens as well. Or also having communications with farmers and knowing where your food comes from. So that's probably the most succinct version of food security. And anyone out there eating any food today? Hands up if you're on the side there. Hands up if you've eaten some food. Yeah, not that little kid. He's on something else. But, well, guys, if you've eaten food, then you're part of this discussion. So please come on in, get comfy, and welcome on in. We're just getting started. Thanks, Annaliese.
Thank you, Jay. Okay, so I'd really love to bring Taj in. And
Hello.
Taj, let's just test your mic again.
Yes, it's
That's
right
good.
here. There is my
Awesome.
voice. Hello.
Woo! Such a great voice.
Thank you.
Such a fan of your voice, Taj.
Lucky
right.
I like talking. Good.
So Taj was in the lockdown in Melbourne. Was anyone else here in the lockdown in Melbourne?
Who was here?
Wow.
I
Yeah.
was there. Hello. Hi, neighbour.
So I really wanted to ask you, can you speak to how you applied your permaculture knowledge and your knowledge about local medicinal plants? So I know you're really big on food as medicine. So
Yes.
I'd really love you to speak to that and how kind of being on a lockdown situation affected your relationship, or were you feeling quite secure in yourself? Like, speak more to that.
Well, I don't just believe in food as medicine. I believe in medicine as food. And so really bringing like a medicine into everyday life and bringing like foods that have way more like phytochemicals, way more plant chemicals that are responsible for our healing into our day-to-day life. And one of the things that I advocate for a lot is grassroots herbal medicine. So bringing like medicine, which is actually a term that I'm not necessarily supposed to use as a herbalist, which is ridiculous. But anyway, moving on. Bringing that kind of like medicine like into like the ground, into our hands. It's like it's people's medicine. It was ours always. It's like not even like people's medicine, but it's ecology's medicine. It's the habitat's medicine. It's everyone's medicine. And so one of the things that I like to do through education is make that more available to people and make it more accessible to people. And during the lockdown, one of the things that I experienced was actually how important that was, because as I started looking on all the websites and things like that I would usually get my supplies of certain medicines from. I have a small garden in Melbourne. It's a community herbal garden, and I try and grow a lot of herbal medicines there, but sometimes I can't grow everything. And so I was looking on the websites, and elderberry is one of the main things that people were using as an antiviral for COVID as herbalists, and every single supply chain that I looked at had sold out. Every single one. And I know a lot of websites with a lot of plant material, and every single one had sold out. And luckily I'd already started growing like a bunch of cuttings of elder, but it really brought it home to me as like, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing, because at the end of the day, if those things aren't growing, we don't have access to that medicine. And so people talk about food security a lot of the time, but not many people talk about medicinal security. And so many people use pharmaceuticals, and so many people know people that are sick and going through certain treatment and things like this, yet we don't think about our medicinal security. So it really hit home to me why I was doing what I was doing, and that was really important to me. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Taj. Jay, I'd love to hear from you. You've got such a good overview on the bigger picture, and I really like talking with you about that, because you help me with the big picture when I need to look at the details. So it's like that patterns to details. And I'd love to, if you could speak to our local food networks, and to particularly our local food networks and supply chains, and give a bit of a current overview about the challenges that we have to overcome.
Wow, there's some pretty big challenges to overcome, I think. I mean, when we start looking at food and security and where we are with that, the difference is whether we're living in a regional area or we're living in a city. Does everyone live in cities here? Everyone live in a big city? For me, during COVID, I lived in a rural area, so I pumped up my garden and went to my local library. There's a local library where they set up a seed saving network, where local people grow seeds and they put it into the public library in Murwillumbah in northern New South Wales, and you could arrive there and sign out seeds, which was a great thing during COVID, except for they closed the libraries. And I had a little bit of something that was quite a strange thing. I arrived one day and I was like, everything's locked down. We all need seed. Seed networks are being sold out everywhere. And I went up to the librarian and I said, oh, look, all of our local seed stash is inside your library. She said, yeah, that's true. I said, can I come in and get some seeds? Because there's heaps of people around who have time now who can get to their garden, who can do those things. She said, I can't let you inside, but you can come to the side door. And I went to the side door, and it felt like distinctly quite strange going to the side door. And she went, "Here, take these." And it's relying on those and setting up those networks that we really are creating resilience for ourselves. When we look at cities, they have the long arms, long arms of want, and unfortunately, those demands are very difficult to meet when we do have food security problems, and it's about creating networks within our local areas, within the city. We have someone in the front row here, John on the Tree, who's a local politician, who's working with verge planting. So looking at creating community gardens, putting gardens in areas that aren't really areas that we should be dealing with, but they're putting food into areas. So it's creating those networks within the local areas where you live. So if you're in a city, then it's like start making those connections. Start finding those areas, finding ways that we can bring food into our places. Linking up to community-supported agriculture. Finding those farmers who are out on the edge of the cities who are bringing it through. Not relying on Woolies, not relying on Coles, finding another way to get that food into your home and creating a relationship with those individuals. That leads on heavily to someone on my right, if you'd like to.
Oh, yeah, I work with seed every day and I'm propagating plants most of the time. And I work at Green Harvest Organic Gardening as well. They're up in Mullaney. They have a big catalogue and we do an online business. We used to have people be able to come to our shop and our gardens, but it's just click and collect or online right now because we're in such high demand. During the COVID lockdown, we had to consistently be talking people out of $1,000 seed orders. We'd be asking them, okay, so have you grown food before? Do you have a garden? Oh, I'm just starting out. I'm like, okay, well, can we just talk about seed viability? And seed viability can kind of go from, well, garlic will only last 6 months unless you plant it. That's the bulbs. And lettuce seed is viable for about 3 years, squash up to about 8. But the viability is what I'm talking about, is if you don't plant that seed again, grow it up and collect that seed, then you've lost that genetic ability for that seed. You've lost your harvest. And so when someone has a $1,000 seed order for their personal, I've got my seed bank, that's not helpful to then the amount of seed that we are trying to get out to Australian home gardeners as well. And at the moment in Australia, we need more seed growers. We have a lot of farmers, but we don't have many dedicated growers in Australia to grow our organic seed or our open pollinated, untreated seed, non-hybridized seeds.
Does anyone in the audience have a garden? Can we see a hand up? You got a garden? Yeah. Who lets their plants go to seeds? Like who replants the seeds from their own garden? Awesome, guys. Look around. Can you just hold that up and just look around with everyone here? and see how many people are here that are like saving their seeds to continue the viability here. Yeah, that's right. Big props to you guys.
Well, thinking about local seed, in Australia, we grow about 15% of our seed that we can go and then get from a small shop like Green Harvest or Diggers. I'm not talking about Yates Seeds at Bunnings or Monsanto, the big seed places. I'm talking about the little places. And even as a permaculture business, we're still importing 85% of our seed from overseas. Lots of different varieties. And it's such a pleasure, at the end of the day to work at a place where there is such varieties. We have hundreds of varieties at Green Harvest. Rare, edible, medicinal, culturally significant seeds that also bring in beneficial insects and bees, repair soil, bring in micronutrients, the inoculants for cover crops that help with that bacterial association. And I just really want to give a big plug to people that are seed saving, the local seed saving networks, places like Green Harvest, Diggers, Eden Seed, that allow that seed to be stayed in Australia and accessible for home gardeners. And, if we don't keep saving our seeds and if we don't keep renewing them because they're a captured and stored resource, if we don't keep them alive, then we are critically endangering rare varieties of plants and nutrition out of existence. So, we've got to save the pandas and the whales, but we also got to save our rare varieties of medicinal and all those valuable qualities that these seeds hold. So that's a big place to get behind in your life and to have that nutrient density for growing local and support our local farmers too. Yo. Jay, did you have a tag on to that?
I was just thinking that, to create seed networks with the people you know and the people you love and the people you don't know, to try and create that within your local municipality, within your shire, within your wherever is kind of one of the key sort of factors right now. If we can save seed and we can pass those on, we can go to Green Harvest and we can hope we'll get some, but we can also share. It doesn't take much to share a packet of seed or just to save it in that light, because it can go in the hands of people who can actually make stuff happen.
Thanks, Jay. So Erin Young, I'd really love to bring you into the conversation. Your speciality is really like within social permaculture, sociocracy, working with groups deeply to gain leverage in the world. And I'd really like to ask you, what's the greatest area of social change that we need to leverage our local food security?
Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. The most secure food we can access is that which is endemic to the place where we are. That means truly local food that is indigenous to the land. To access that food, we have to choose to want to eat it, and we have to choose to want to know it, and we have to choose to want to relate to the people who know it as well. So relationship is a critical part of food security, not only amongst the people we know, but to the land, to the seasons, to the people who know how to access food that might be high up in a certain spot that we don't know about because it's got a microclimate that can preserve food when there's a bushfire coming through. So we're all pretty framed by the pandemic that is still happening in the world and that we are quite sheltered from here in Australia. And this rides right off the back of the black summer of bushfires that happened in 2019, 2020. And I was just down in Mullumbimby last week for the Northern Rivers Bushfire Convergence, where the network of emergency responders, government, council, and community groups came together to really assess how do we do. It's more than a year later, we haven't had time or opportunity to come together. What happened? And it's critical that those conversations happened. And one of the biggest things that came through that, which is highly relevant to food security, is that we've got to tell the stories. We've got to tell our stories of what we're doing. Just like you're sharing the seed bank at your local library. Who knew that local libraries could have seed banks? Put up your hand if you knew that. Okay, there's a couple of tender hands out there. Well, you know what? Libraries are a resource of you and your community. Just like you can go and order books, you can also choose to ask, hey, can we have a seed space? Or can we have a worm farm where we can access worms to take to our own place? So relationships critical. In 2011, when the floods happened in Brisbane, there was a social enterprise called Food Connect, which is still happily running along, who, because of their networks where they connect city consumers with country growers within about a 5-hour drive time of Brisbane, they might have some exceptions, but that's about how it works. The whole point of that system is to create connection and relationship. And during the floods, they could access organic food to city consumers because they had relationships with the growers, and the growers knew where to go. The growers knew how to access consumers. And so they had people, kayaking across rivers and doing wonderful adventures to get people food. The cool thing about Food Connect system is that they have a city cousin network where you go and pick up your food box from someone in your neighborhood whose house you go to every week, and you're like, hey, thanks for receiving my box for me, and we'll see you next week. And it's those relationships that are critical, and it's critical that we do them often, and it's critical that we build the muscle of relationship all the time. It's not just when, oh, now there's a bushfire coming, quick scramble, or now there's a pandemic coming, quick get onto the bulk foods. It's like, hold on a second, what are you doing all the time? Because it's completely extractive to be going into those supply chains, especially in a panic state when there's a crisis happening, and expect you to have food available to you when you haven't put any effort in to the system that feeds you and sustains you all the time. So a big part of the social aspect of food security is self-responsibility. And I think that's inside of all of this as well.
And I might just say on that note as well, it's just yeah, it's really, really
Lay
potent.
it down.
That's why you're a potent edge. That's really potent. And I think that one of the things that really stands out to me with permaculture, one of the things that I've constantly grappled with is permaculture stands for permanent agriculture or permanent culture. And I'm always asking the question, how do you have a permanent culture in a temporary society? And one of the things that I think about in our society is that we're always responding to immediacy. And I think that permaculture is the opposite of that. So at least if we can't exactly create a permanent culture, we can at least start to by not responding to immediacy all the time, and by putting in plans and action and actually cultivating the relationships that Erin is talking about.
And I just wanted to drop in as well that festival space like we're at now, we know and love this space, and we're so I'm so grateful that we all get to be here doing this. This is such an amazing opportunity for us to run drills. How do we supply a whole bunch, thousands of people with organic food for a short amount of time? Imagine if we had the designing and the planning to utilize these spaces as opportunities for us to play a few games that actually are really meaningful when the shit hits the fan. There's so many opportunities for us here that are right under our nose, and we just have to have the eyes to see them and understand the scope of what's going on in the world.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing, is looking at having some foresight. I mean, we can't even plan 2 or 3 years ahead now. It feels like we're in a space where everything's kind of locked and stopped and shut up, but we have the ability now with the time around us is to start creating those networks and start putting food in the ground, and to be looking at small scale initiatives in your local suburb and within your local shire to kind of set ourselves up for something. Because things aren't going to miraculously click your fingers and it's all going to change. We're in this for a while, and it's those networks that are really going to push us forward into the future.
And best done when it's based around fun. There's a bunch of people I know in Brisbane, especially in West End, who get together every Wednesday night or a night of the week, and they socialise. And it's their night of the week where they get to see each other, and they trade their kefir, and they bake their sourdough bread, and they chat away while they're standing in line, and they all know where to go when they need food, and they all know each other, and it's fun. And if we create fun around these spaces, then we're going to anchor it in something that's more motivating to us than panic.
Yeah, it's that community that is our resilience. In the end, that's it.
With our festival cultures, with our brothers and sisters over here eating their lovely food. If you've just joined us, guys, we're talking about food security. How do we gain access to food when shit hits the fan? Like, what are we actually going to do? And the reality is how beautiful we have this opportunity to experience this for a few days. I was overseas when the pandemic hit. I was in Costa Rica, and Panama, and I had friends in a festival there. And I chose not to go. I was going somewhere else. And they got locked in. They literally got locked into a festival, and this beautiful festival became entrapped. And the fear set in when they realized that no more trucks were coming in, no buses were going out. And that's, in its sense, where we turn into like our primal instinct. Where am I going to get food? Where am I going to sleep? And who am I going to be with? And that's really the essence of this, and this is what sparked. I really appreciate that Annaliese has, brought us all together, and of course with the Changemakers course that we run, the 2-week permaculture design course, where we fully explore, like, how do we read our landscapes? Where does food grow well? What type of soils support that? And as our sister Taj said here about, the elder cuttings, we talk about seeds and how to save seeds, but seed in itself is fragile. What about perennial? Can I see a show of hands? Who knows what perennial food is? Yeah, perennial crops? Yeah, for those that aren't aware, it's food that grows all year round. And the further south that we get in latitude, the less of that is. I'm from the tropics, and a lot of what I do is grow food that grows all year round. And tree crops are the greatest example for this, right? And being able to have cuttings, being able to give rootstock that's growing is an abundant, life-sustaining source of having access to secure food all the time. And so really the essence of this is bringing this with you guys and having this discussion around, like, what do we really do if we get locked in? What are the capabilities that we have in our own hands to ensure that we can support ourselves and support each other, especially when there's serious shit going on out in the world?
Wow, yeah. Taj, do you want to add something to that?
Yeah, I do actually, because I get asked this question all the time. I get asked, like, permaculture. Can permaculture feed the world? Like, do you reckon the permaculture can really do that? And as Jay's talking about perennial systems, I consider myself more of a perennial gardener. Actually, that's me and perennials get along. But it's more so like when people ask about whether permaculture can feed the world, like I don't have a doubt that it can. I don't think that it's an environmental issue or even how much of a yield that you will get. It's an economic issue, and it's an issue that's based on labor and the amount of labor that we have, because now with modern agriculture we have machinery that can go through in monocultures and harvest all of our annuals, and they can do that in seconds. If you've got a perennial system, you can't do that in seconds. You actually have to rely on people, and you have to rely on people and their labor. So then it becomes an economic issue, because then you'll see organic food actually getting more expensive as you're trying to get them all from food forests, and it'll become for some elite sector of people that can only afford perennial system food forest food or something like that. And so this is one of the reasons why I really do believe in localizing these systems to your local communities, because then you do start actually relying on people's labor around you, and you're not just relying on this the economics of a system that you're subjected to in the modern agricultural world.
And you don't get tricked that you have to rely on someone who's far away who you don't know to exist. Your crew have capability, and you can lean into that, and that is priceless. You can't pay for that. You have to build that.
Yeah, indeed. And growing the food ourselves, or knowing and looking into the eyes of the producers at the farmers market or at the farm gate, you can kind of get a better sense that they're highly unlikely to cut the corner and dump a bunch of chemicals or herbicides or pesticides onto those crops, because there's a relationship that's built there But when we get our food from so much further away, it's vulnerable, but also we're vulnerable because our nutrition goes down. We're also often buying food out of season as well too, and that actually is a change of a relationship on how it affects us to be able to gain the nutrients that our body needs. We can think we're eating great salads and broccoli, but if we're eating broccoli out of season here now, then, or broccoli's just starting to come on, we're starting to plant it for winter, but if we're eating it out of season, then it might be coming from New Zealand, it could be coming from Mexico, and how are they treating that food? And then what is actually sprayed or gassed around those vegetables to do that long haul? Because if you pick broccoli, you see how long it actually lasts for. So how do they actually get it to point A to point B looking so fresh? There's tips and tricks to the trade. I know where I'd rather go, and that's local every time.
It's an interesting thing when you talk like that. Like the localization of food and the supply networks. Because I'm from Canada, and I don't know if anyone's ever been to Canada before.
Woo-hoo!
I can usually count on. You can usually count on at least 6 months of cold and snow on the ground, which means the reality of your food networks are reliant on Mexico, South America, and making its way through America to make it to the Canadian border. This puts food security in such a different relationship, and I one of the reasons why when I first came to Australia, I was like, wow, you can grow food all year round. This rocks. I can stay here.
Yeah.
The reality is that
We'll have you, Jay.
You're
a great guy.
And the reality is that we are in a really unique place. This big island has everything that we require, and we have such different ecosystems that are around and such different growing regions that we have the potential to make that happen. And it can't be reliant on backpackers to pick it all, and for everything else, we need to find different ways of localizing our food, and that's when it comes down to community-supported agriculture and creating those relationships and growing it in local areas. I think that's the key element that we're looking at here more than anything else. And if we feel we're worried about where our food comes from, maybe we have to take a little bit of time off work and get our hands in the soil.
Yeah, I'd really like to add to that. It's really important. It's really, I think, a lot of it comes back to that. I think we've been living in such an abundant lifestyle. Everything's been lavish. We can pay for anything we want. Our work's been going really well. Everyone's been leveraging and leveraging and leveraging. But what's been leveraging hugely is disconnect. Disconnect is something that we do 3 times a day around about, and that's eating food. Who eats food? Yeah, pretty much everyone is on that unless you're breatharian, and I know a couple of those and they blow my mind. But, most of us, we're into food. We're into good food. And we want to be able to access good food. And sometimes the tenure is really challenging. So I'd love to just throw around some ideas, because we're all permaculturalists are edge creatures. And that means that we can kind of come up with creative ideas. And one of our principles is creatively respond to change. And that's one that's greatly linked for me into community response to disaster. Or it could be termed as community response to opportunity. Just depends on how broad your perspective is. I think those of us that could roll with creative options to deal with a lockdown or any kind of challenge/disaster, we're able to be far more creative. So land tenure, let's speak about that. And let's speak about land tenure, access, how and where we could grow our food. Accommodation's a whole other thing, but it's a relationship. But let's really tune into a local food with land tenure. Who'd like to speak to that?
I can start on that one. I've been involved in community gardens ever since I discovered permaculture about 11 years ago. And is anyone else involved in a community garden? Who's got a hand up over there? Yep, I think there's a dude out there. Oh no, he was just waving at someone. That's all right. Yep, I'm waving at you too, mate. So community gardens is typically a space that we can access either on local council land, or in some cases it's on private land as well, which is dedicated to growing food, but also other species. And that's one of the most common ways and the easiest way for anybody to access land if they don't have it themselves. Given that in that condition, you're able to interact and connect with other people that are like-minded, that are interested, that have the knowledge and skills around growing food or medicinals, or even fibres. And that has been something that I was really passionate about for many years. And then I started to see other models, and it got mentioned, like community-supported agriculture, and that's about buying into a system that supports direct supply from farmers, like a membership subscription. And that's when then I discovered like meeting farmers directly, and actually finding out that not only farmers but many other people often have land that's available for use. Now, let's fast forward a few years, and I realized that seed balls and guerrilla gardening and taking over the verge, which full respect to that, and I fully see the place of that, and I think it's really powerful. We can utilize as much space as possible. What I came to realize is that if I cut off my dreadlocks and I approach people that are able to make policy and make changes on a development scale, then I can actually influence the minds of people that are clear felling land for real estate developments. And this is where I myself personally, in a way, felt a little bit like Neo and had to go like into the belly of the Matrix. And since then, I've actually been blown away, and I'd really like to share with you guys that when I've had conversations with people that are wealthy people that might drive a Mercedes or an Audi, and hearing them say, "Oh, I really want organic food on the farm. I really want for people to come onto the property and have this." And they might have 70 acres. In particular, one of my clients, 1,000 acres. And their development style of a community is much different to maybe some of our ideas of community. And what I've come to realize is that there's so many opportunities are available, and opportunities for individuals that have the audacity to approach these people, and actually the willingness that they have to provide large amounts of land for people that are willing to take that on is phenomenal. And to see that, especially in today's day and age, that we can actually draw up an agreement, an understanding or a contract that says that you can secure access to someone else's land legally, and you can farm that land that would otherwise be, left as degraded country or whatever it might be. And I just wanted to put that in there because I'm sure that everyone's got little takes on where to grow food, but having my mind stretched now in those conversations around developers that are like, "Oh, syntropics and food forests, and tell me more about that. Oh, that's exactly what we want." And seeing them willing to like offer that opportunity and that investment in the land, wanting what we have for those people that had their hand up, the saving seeds that are growing, and to rally together. So it's really up to us to ensure that not just for ourselves, but our community and our children's children, that we're able to step into that place and really take that offer up to utilize that land from, let's say, those that have too much of it. So I just want to offer that to you guys there.
Thank you, Jay. Someone else, Erin?
Another thing that's right under your nose is probably your backyard. And if you want to go out and buy a book to help you learn about food security for yourself and your local neighborhood, I highly recommend David Holmgren's Retro Suburbia. Through divine timing, he put together this very important piece of work to help people in the cities understand just how set up the suburbs are for producing food. Usually good soil, usually good sunlight, usually good water access, and usually very good relative location to a whole bunch of other people who are also potentially growing and consuming.
Yeah.
Not only just food, but other things like fiber and fuel and ... So there's whole economies that we can create in the suburbs. that's just sitting there waiting in potential for us to embrace.
I mean, as an architect, some of the things I've been kind of pushing for a very long time, and this is maybe back to the droughts in Brisbane in 2005, where we were down to like 25% of the water source. And at that point in time, there was heaps of things on the horizon, people looking at opportunities of reclaiming things like grey water. You know, whenever we're down to this watering source, no one was able to use water for anything, and everyone's gardens are dying, but we still have water sources. We still have a relationship between the dwellings that we're in and creating a symbiotic relationship between that and our surroundings. We have the ability to do that. We have the ability to green our own little suburban block, to find those verges, to find those places within local areas. They're the things that are going to give us the security we're searching for.
Thanks, Jay. Taj.
I might just add that one of the things that I think is going to give us the most security, it's funny that we're talking about food. Food's a very practical thing, but as Erin would well know, it's the relationships that you create with people which are actually gonna hold that. And I really think that as Jay was talking about, there's so much land tied up with so little people, and then there's so many people that are like just dying to get things in the ground and like really, really want to practice all of this. And then there's like such a disconnect between the two. And one of the things that I think is like having conversations with people and being open-minded. So it means like not sticking to your class, not sticking to your age groups, like not sticking to these things, like actually going outside and having a conversation with people rather than just conversations on your phone, and trying to just ask people. Like the amount of times I've gone up to someone and be like, do you eat those pomegranates? And they'll be like, oh, you want some? And then they'll go and get bags for me and things like that. And all it took was just for me to be brave enough to ask a question. And so I think that it sounds like such a small thing, but I think that these are the things that we're going to really need to create that kind of bridge between people again, so that we can actually start utilizing land again, because something is going to have to change. And the other thing that I will say on that is that I think that a lot of the time people can be very idealistic when they start permaculture and they want to get involved with people. And one of the things that we really need to consider when we're making social kind of agreements is to actually make agreements with people and to talk and to communicate effectively about what people do agree on, because there can be really gray areas around that. And I really have to stress that this isn't just a practical kind of permaculture aspect. This is a social permaculture thing, and everything really is. You can't separate the two.
Okay, so we got our livelihood, we're cruising along, we got our permaculture lifestyle, our business, COVID hits, boom. Some people lost their business and their livelihood. It didn't really happen for us. Yeah. Just a little drop on how it affected us, though.
I actually was really blown away. I got so much support from people. If you're one of those people, thank you so much. It was really, really helpful. And it was also really beautiful to finally see that people were valuing what I've been valuing all along as well, because people started to really cotton on and go, oh my God, this is important. I need to grow food. I need to care about medicine. Oh wait, you have antivirals. Oh, I need those. And I was just so excited to see that people actually wanted this and wanted to kind of support what I have been saying all along. So it actually worked really, really well, and I hope it continues to, not just for me, but for the greater purpose of what I believe in too.
That happened to anyone else? Anyone that grows food here? Did you have anyone come up to you and be like, so how do you grow food? Where are you going to get toilet paper from?
It's in some part of what we do, suddenly people took us seriously.
Oh, so now you want to know about it.
Yeah, someone else.
For me, I kind of have a diverse sort of portfolio. I'm an architect, do permaculture, do some education, but a large portion of my life has been building with bamboo, mainly for a lot of it in festivals and projects overseas. So not being able to travel anymore and not having festivals to go and build a stage at it or bamboo, it drastically changed, but it allowed me to kind of turn inward and go back to my garden and spend a bit more time with it rather than kind of flirting around and being back and forth. And then I had lots of individuals who approached me going, especially leaving the urban centers, wanting natural building. So I had mine actually increased in a manner. It meant shuffling and doing a little dance to make it all happen. But it's a better direction, this whole thing that we're going through is what we need to go through to kind of constrict our consumption. It needs to change. We need to change. If this is the way we're going to do it, then we need change.
Thank you. Erin, can we hear from you?
Yeah, I just want to do a little subversion of the answer for a moment, and then I'll answer the question.
I like it.
There's incredible social justice and environmental justice opportunities that are wrapped up in this. And like with anything in permaculture, there's not just one problem that gets dealt with. Often when you do things in a living systems, integrated way, you resolve a whole bunch of issues through, an integrated approach. So I can't help but think of Mark Jones, who's a Quandamooka traditional owner over on Tarrangari, otherwise known as Manduraba, otherwise known as North Stradbroke Island. And he's a dugong man. And as a dugong man, as the knowledge keeper of dugong, he is able to harvest and hunt dugong. But more than that, Mark knows where dugong sleeps, where dugong breeds, what dugong eats, when dugong's in this place, when dugong's in that place, what do baby dugongs do? He has a relationship with dugong. And he's also got his land on Main Beach, North Stradbroke Island, where he's trying to grow food in sand. And he's doing it. It's not like critically abundant just yet, but he is making it happen. So there are lots of critical opportunities that further other essential issues that are going on in our cultures, like bringing Indigenous knowledge to the forefront of what we do in this country, to which non-Indigenous people are so young in our knowledge about what happens here. I really felt it important to say that. To answer the question,
thank you.
I just so happened to have a 1 day a week job, a supplementary income job with the local organic farm in my area in Doonan, just near Yamundi on the Sunshine Coast, Gubby Gubby country, and the home delivery box service went through the roof, like seeds and like lots of things, and so we were busy. And the good thing is that we were a good team, we knew how to work together, and we just tucked in and we went for it. So, that was a really valuable thing for me in COVID time. I wasn't stressing financially, but I also wasn't stressing from like a food security perspective or like a community resilience perspective. There was connectivity there. So I was really grateful to have that.
Thank you.
As I sort of touched on before, I was overseas at the time and I was watching world news while I was also seeing the reels of people back home still going to pubs and still out and about dancing while other countries were like locked down. The town that I was in basically went from like bustling to like just pigeons in the street within 3 days. And I had to hightail it home. I realized that actually a lot of people are going to like, this hasn't hit Australia yet, but a lot of people are going to like pack it in and be like, oh, what do we do? And I phoned some people and they're like, no, we're cool. We're sweet. Like, yeah, there's no toilet paper in the shops, but yeah, nothing's changed here. And so instead of flying deeper into the jungle, I went, I think I need to get home. And running a business that helps people design and install and set up food gardens in their own property, I realized like, you know what, I think people are going to need this even more now. And so I boosted home and I did my 2 week indoors, and that spun me out because everyone wanted to come and visit me in that time. And I said, I'm supposed to be alone. And they went, we're just so happy you're here. Now, tell us what you know. And I said, well, look, the most important thing is like our food. Like, and I shared like what's going on in the world is like stuff's going to get harder and harder to get to. And what was really funny was when I did go to the supermarket, the pasta was sold out and all the fresh food was still there. And I just scratched my head and I really thought to myself, like, wow, it's really interesting what people think is secure and what people see as food. And I decided to make a video and jumped online and went, all right, guys, yeah, we're all Organic Motion. We're still servicing backyard gardens. So if you want us to wear gloves, we will, but we'll still come into the garden. And our calls and inquiries just increased, and it was really great. I had to employ more people, and it really showed me that it was like all of a sudden, like I make a joke about it, but in a friendly way, people really went, oh, okay, we see this. And it's something that I think a lot of people know, but there's that, as Annaliese said, there's a bit of a disconnection. And so I'd also like to just touch on that is, like, we're talking about food security, but it's not actually that everybody gets their hands dirty and everybody has to grow food. There's like a whole supply there. And as Erin said, with the food box systems, you don't have to be growing the food, but being involved in that supply of producing, those vital ingredients and those vital elements for life, I think is so critical in our time. And as a friend of mine said, I've just recently taken over a little city garden, and he said to me, he goes, what I realize is that people don't understand the difference between being a producer and a consumer. We hear consumer so much in market, we're bombarded with it about consumers and consumerism. But it's like, how often do we get promoted to be producers, right? How often do people actually get asked, how are you giving back? And that's one of the questions that now I pose to other businesses, other business holders, and other organizations is, no matter what your organization is, and full love and respect to the jewelry makers, to the clothes designers, to the body workers and the healers, it's all important, it's all part of it. But how is that giving back to those resources? And it's not just food or medicines, but building materials and fiber. How is what we're doing in our life giving back to our earth that ultimately sustains us? So that opens a whole nother question. We might leave that for another time. But yeah, so great. Thanks again, Annaliese. Great question.
Well, thank you, Jay. So we're just here in our last moments, and I just want to put all of our team on spot for a moment. I want to give everyone 30 seconds as permaculturalists to say, how do we leverage permaculture in our work? And actually, I want to bring it more to, what was the moment that you decided, yes, I can see how permaculture can leverage what I do in the world? So speak to that. Jay, you got 30 seconds.
Okay, 30 seconds. I was working in Brisbane designing 30-story high-rise residential and 6-packs and 12-packs, and I went and did my permaculture course with Jeff Lawton and Bill Mollison. It fundamentally gave me a different framework of how I saw design and how we can integrate our lives with the environment.
Wow.
And that set me on the course that way. And I'm so happy 22 years later that is the path I've taken, because
Bam.
I could still be sitting in front of that computer. I hand it off to...
Wow. Amazing. Thank you. Erin, you got the marker on? Bam.
All right, so background as an environmental engineer, I always knew it wasn't the environment creating problems, it was people and how people were thinking and making decisions. Fast forward 10 years and a bunch of international travel. I find myself in Mozambique being blown away by this permaculture book I'm reading. I do a PDC permaculture design course. 2 years later, I get social permaculture dropped into my reality and all of the light bulbs go on and I realize, ding, 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 living systems for people.
Yeah. Nailed it. All right, who's up here next? Taj. Bam.
Okay, I grew up in the middle of suburbia with a feeling that something was really wrong, and I didn't know what. And then I realized that it was the system that I was a part of. And then I discovered permaculture, and I realized that it was all about relationship. And relationship is what I'm truly passionate about. The earth has been like providing things to me, food, medicine, fiber. And then I thought about reciprocity, and I was like, why would I not want to be a part of that relationship?
Woo! Yeah. Jay Jackson.
Well, there's a bit of a theme there. I grew up running around in the bush barefoot for hours on ends and came home before dark, and brought up in a world pulling burnouts, having a barbecue, mate. Yeah, she'd be right. Going fucking the grand final. Woo! Yeah. And then I put in oil pipelines across our country and realised Australia produces more oil than we even consume. And I went, WTF. Whoa. And it hit me like, what world am I living in, and what am I producing, and what am I contributing to? Changed my whole world, permaculture, and went, I've got to give back. And not only give back to myself, my community, but to our next generation and to you guys.
Yeah. It's that next generation that I'm talking about. So we're the change
How about you,
makers.
Annaliese? Hold on, we've got a couple of seconds left.
Give us the drop. 30 seconds.
I'm trying to end on time. Okay, so my drop is, without the need to do that, okay, I saw the designer's manual when I was 15, went, okay, I'm going to study something. I wanted to study about marine biology, but I thought, hang on a second, I actually want to take care of what's happening on the landscape, and then to happen on the landscape, I need to take care of people. And so I applied the science to the people. The best thing I could see was permaculture. I kept coming back to it again and again. And meeting the most incredible people, it's like not doing this by myself. I want to learn from everyone I can to just come up with the best strategies possible. And that's the Change Makers Permaculture Design course that we have now. And all of us have learned from the best people. We've been hunting them down, learning with them, running with them strong. And if I think about an old growth forest, a lot of our elders are passing away. Bill Mollison passed away in fairly recent times, and he's one of the co-originators of permaculture. And so it's about us capturing and storing for future generations some of the best knowledge that we can. It's not all the answers, but it's a lot of the answers, and it's a lot of creative decision-making processes and thinking on how we can be the best that we can for the future and come up with resilient strategies. So when something like COVID comes in, it's like, meh, I'm just going to let it float over because I can
Totally not worried.
keep going strong with the path that is vital and laid out before us. Yeah.
And guys, if you didn't get it, Annaliese Hordern is the director of the Changemakers Permaculture Design course. It happens in November in Sunshine Coast. And there's a special opportunity just for you guys tonight. There's just been a release of some early bird tickets. It's a limited number. So we're going to be available on the side here, and pull her aside if you're interested to learn more about permaculture. Is there anyone who's already done a permaculture design course in the audience? Yeah? Turn to your friend and say, why haven't you done your PDC yet? Yep, that's right, guys. And big shout out to the brother here behind the camera, Mr. Shay Douglas.
Thank you.
So Shay Douglas is from Earth Heroes TV, and if you want to see him afterwards, actually our whole team's just going to come over on the side here so we can make space respectfully to the next crew coming up. But Shay's got some 30-day memberships to Earth Heroes Television, which is conscious TV. You can tune in, drop in, and gain more knowledge. So thank you so much, Shay. Thank you so much, Earth Heroes Television, for featuring us.
Thanks for coming out.
Thank you so much. And I have a contact list for anyone that would like to learn more from us, or specifically from one of us to help. We're here in service. We're service to the people and to the planet. And especially if you're interested in the permaculture design course, I just want to give you guys an idea of, there's a lot of courses out there, but we just want to show up and say, hey, this is what we're about. If you want to come get involved with us, please.
If you want to change the world, talk to this lady.
All of us. And thank you to all of you for coming and caring for this subject. Thank you so much. Thank you to Earth Frequency, the space, to our sound crew, all. Thank you. Also, one last thing.